They say the forest keeps secrets, secrets that should never be spoken aloud. When Daniel first moved into his grandfather's cabin deep in the Appalachian woods, he thought it would be an escape from the noise of the city. The cabin was old, its walls thick with the scent of pine and smoke, and the silence around it was almost absolute. Too absolute. At night, the wind should have rustled through the trees, but instead there was only a heavy stillness, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. On his second night, Daniel heard it. A faint knocking sound, not on the door but beneath the floorboards. At first he laughed it off, thinking it was the old wood shifting in the cold. But the knocking came again, slow measured, as if something or someone was signaling from below. The next morning, he searched the cabin's foundation but found nothing, only damp earth and roots twisting like veins beneath the soil. He tried to dismiss it, but that night the knocking returned, louder now and followed by a sound that chilled his blood, a whisper, dragging through the air, calling his name. Daniel. He froze in his bed, heart racing, every muscle locked in terror. The voice was hoarse, as if it had traveled from underground, from beneath the cabin itself. He tried to convince himself it was a dream. But dreams don't leave footprints. The following morning, just outside his front door, he found fresh tracks in the dirt. They weren't animal tracks, no claws, no hooves. They were human, but too long, too thin, with toes that seemed to stretch unnaturally forward, digging into the earth as if clinging to the soil. The tracks led back toward the cabin and then vanished beneath the wooden steps. Daniel should have left. He should have packed his bags and never looked back. But curiosity, that ancient curse, gnawed at him. That evening, armed with nothing more than a flashlight, he pried open a loose board near the back of the cabin. Beneath, he found a narrow crawl space, damp and suffocating. The smell hit him instantly. Rot, earth, and something metallic like rust or blood. He pointed the flashlight inside, and that's when he saw them. Not one, but dozens of small, crudely carved figures scattered in the dirt. Each one was made of twigs and bound with strips of cloth. And every figure had a crude face scratched into it, faces twisted in agony. At the center of them all was a larger figure, almost the size of a child, its head wrapped in decaying fabric, its body blackened with age. And then from the darkness behind the figure came the whisper again. Daniel. The light flickered. The beam cut in and out, revealing not just the figures, but something shifting in the shadows. He dropped the board back into place and stumbled away, his breath ragged. But as he turned, his eyes caught the cabin's mirror above the fireplace. His reflection wasn't alone. Behind him, standing just beyond the reach of the light, was a shape. Tall, thin, its face hidden by the same rotting cloth he had just seen beneath the cabin. Daniel's breath caught in his throat as he spun around, flashlight trembling in his hand. The room was empty. The mirror must have lied. But when he turned back, his reflection was alone again, sweat running down its pale face, eyes wide with terror. He didn't sleep that night. The knocking beneath the floor grew louder, faster, like desperate fists pounding from the other side of a coffin. The whispers came in waves, sometimes calling his name, sometimes murmuring words he couldn't understand. Old, guttural sounds that felt older than the forest itself. By dawn, Daniel was convinced he had to leave. He threw his clothes into a bag, ignoring the icy dread that seemed to press against the walls. But when he stepped outside, the world had changed. The tracks were back. Dozens of them, circling the cabin like predators stalking prey. And on every wooden surface, the steps, the doorframe, even the trees nearby, there were carvings. Symbols jagged and sharp, etched deep into the grain. He didn't remember seeing them before, but now they were everywhere, bleeding with sap as if the forest itself had been cut open. The car wouldn't start. No matter how many times he turned the key, the engine only coughed and died. Desperate, Daniel began walking down the dirt path that led to the main road. But the farther he walked, the more the forest seemed to twist. Landmarks repeated themselves. The same dead oak with its split trunk. The same cluster of moss-covered stones. The same broken fence post. He was walking in circles. As night fell again, Daniel returned to the cabin, not by choice, but as if the forest had herded him back. The air was colder now, thick with the smell of soil and decay. Inside, the figures beneath the floor seemed louder, as if their whispers seeped through the cracks. He grabbed his phone, desperate for a signal. Nothing, only static. But through that static came a voice, raspy, distorted, yet unmistakable. Daniel, you shouldn't have opened the floor. The phone died in his hand. The knocking stopped. Silence, heavy and complete, swallowed the cabin. For a moment, he thought it was over. But then, from the crawl space, he heard it, the slow sound of wood splintering. Something was pushing upward. He backed away as the floor cracked. Fingers, long, pale, and dirt-caked, forced their way through the wood. Then another hand. Then the cloth-wrapped head rose into the light, snapping the boards apart like kindling. The figure pulled itself free, impossibly tall, its limbs bending at angles that no human body should. The stench of rot filled the room as it straightened to its full height. The cloth around its head shifted, revealing nothing beneath but darkness, an endless void where a face should be. "Daniel," it whispered again, though its cloth-wrapped mouth never moved. He stumbled toward the door, but it slammed shut before he touched it. Every window blackened, as if night itself had poured inside. The creature stepped closer, each movement jerking, unnatural like a puppet pulled by unseen strings. Daniel fell to his knees, his flashlight clattering across the floor. The beam caught the smaller twig figure still beneath the cabin, now writhing, twitching as if alive. They turned their crude faces toward him in unison. The last thing Daniel felt was the cold press of those cloth-wrapped fingers against his throat, pulling him down into the dark that waited below the cabin. The forest went silent again. By morning, the cabin stood empty, its windows dark, its doors locked. Travelers who passed along the road sometimes claimed they saw faint lights glowing from within, or heard a man's voice calling desperately from the woods. But no one ever found Daniel. And if you ever wander into the Appalachian forests and hear a knocking beneath your feet, do not answer, because the forest never gives back what it takes.
Dare to enter again? Subscribe if you're not afraid of what comes next.